Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach.
I'm Holly Deschenes. I am Brandon's co-host and producer for this podcast.
So today we're going to be getting into this idea of permission to make it up. So a lot of the conversations we have here is to dismantle your past. And another way to look at that is your programming. So we have all these societal norms or the way things have historically been done. And, we've talked a lot about that. I know you gave a story about, something with the grandma used to make something because of a certain pan, right? What was that
Yeah,
story?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's the ham, like the granddaughter. It was the granddaughter is like watching her mom cook a ham, and her mom cuts the ends off the ham and puts it in the pan. The daughter's like, "Mom, why do you cut the ends off the ham?" And she's like, "Well, that's what Grandma always did." So then they ask Grandma, and Grandma's like, "Well, yeah, because that's the only way it would fit in the oven."
That's these ideas that, all the societal norms we have, it's like it was made up by somebody at some point, and it seemed like a pretty good way to do things at that time. And so we start to school is a big kind of part of that, where, there's a certain way you go about things. I think we're paying more attention now to like the kids that have challenges with kind of that way of learning. I think there's a lot of awareness around that, but it is just like your own individual input matters, and your ability to be creative. Many times, well, when we're little kids, we're naturally creative, like our mind's wide open. And through these different life experiences, we start to fall in line. We start to wire ourselves to stay safe. And so that means just kind of following the momentum of the direction everybody's heading. When we branch out of that, generally there's like insecurity, uncertainty. Like I feel like I'm like betraying my family, and there's all these mixed emotions that come in that make us very conflicted. But it's this ability to get really connected with yourself, lead with your heart, and kind of follow your own individual path, which takes a massive amount of courage. That's that's this trust that I'm going to figure it out as I go. And, my entire business, I haven't really used anybody else's model. I just like decided, hey, this is what I think would be a cool career, and I'm just going to make it up. And I make up my packages, my prices, like it's very inherent to the entrepreneurial process. But, we do have to do deprogramming in that process. These things are hardwired into us to move in this direction. And so anytime we step out of it, it does create anxieties. It does create self-doubt. That's actually how we build self-esteem and confidence, is the ability to risk social injury. So that the Chase Hughes guy talks a lot about this. That's a big way to build confidence, is you have to be willing to disappoint other people, or, be able to bear their judgments, to be misunderstood. Those types of things, they start to build this and cultivate this inner strength that allows you to walk your own path. Which there are some people that just kind of inherently like, yeah, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this. They have a pretty good idea, and it suits them well. There's people that feel like they're pressured into having to do the normal path. And, that's why we have like artists, so musicians, painters, things like that. We're engaging that creative faculty, which is like, if I'm going to stand out, I have to do something different than everybody else. We have different influences we pull from, but, really it is this path of individuality. That's what creates this extra value, and actually makes us special. If I'm just doing the same things everybody else is doing, that's the definition of average. Okay. It's just, that's what's normal. And there's no judgment on that, but, we may want that in life. We may just want that safety and security, and not to be kind of challenged on this level. But once again, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably think a little bit differently. You probably feel a little misunderstood. You feel like you're pushing against the grain a little bit. We're here to build confidence in that way of being. I'm a big believer in practicing what I preach. And so, this is the path I've taken. And so that's where my wisdom lies. It's just getting more and more comfortable with that idea that, like, I don't have to know how it's going to look. I just have to give myself that permission to start, head in a direction that I feel inspired to, or that I'm excited about. And I want to follow those paths and see where they lead. That's what brings us fulfillment, is when we're doing things in alignment with who we are. That's also, it can be a good avenue for meaningful work as well. Not that being different has to be a career. It could just be like, well, like, yeah, I have these aspects of myself that I like to explore. I might work a normal like corporate job or something like that, but I might have this other side of me that's calling me. And so I want to be able to open that up and give myself permission to do that and just kind of play around with things. And not everything has to be so serious. So we're going to get into those details today. So do you have a question to start off with?
Well, I don't really have a question as much as a statement. We talked about this a little bit before. I was listening to a podcast earlier and they were talking about a little bit of the same kind of idea, but one of the things they said was like everybody made it up at some point. Jeff Bezos made it up. Elon Musk made it up. Like name somebody who's built something, right? They made it up. And there would be no innovation at all, like if everybody knew what they were doing all the time.
I mean, that's really what innovation is. It's this ability to think differently. It's this ability to see situations through a different lens than the norm or everybody else. I think we know that it's a special thing, you know. I think, because we have so many examples of like really anybody that's done anything great. It's like they were a strong individual. They really believed in something and they really fought to create that and try and get that to take roots in this world. I think it's they're big callings though. And so once again, we're not saying like everybody needs to try and be the next Bezos or Musk. What's your version? Or have you shut down creativity? Am I just going through the motions of life? Do I need some more kind of life, some of that flow to come into me so that my mind can expand and think differently and grow? Because that's kind of what refreshes us. I don't think anybody's like truly happy living the same exact day over and over again. I think a lot of that's built on security and safety. And while those things are important, I think we all need some uncertainty in our life and we need things we're not sure of, because that makes us question ourselves. And when we question ourselves, that's what leads to deeper thought. That's what expands our mind is when we're not just running through these programs constantly. So, innovation is very valued in this world. Like people are always, that's the entrepreneurial mindset once again, is like, how do I take something current and make it better? I have to see it differently. I have to find, what would create a better user experience with like Apple, right? It's like everything's their own thing. They took that path and it's just like, I hate other products now because of it, right? Because I don't know how to use it because I'm like in their stuff, right? But they made things different on purpose. And that also kind of creates this. You create, kind of the tribal mentality, or you create people that align with it that also think differently. And that was actually Apple's branding for a while, right? Think differently. So it's those ideas that, yeah, life would get pretty boring if everything was the same all the time. So we're always pushing to grow. We're always pushing to evolve. How do I do things better? How do I show up more fully as myself? How do I act more in alignment with that? We tend to think it's this big risk, but it's really not. It's just that social injury piece. It's just being misunderstood or judged. It's not really life or death scenarios anymore. And that stuff is hardwired into our brain is we prefer to be with the crowd because that's what really kept us safe, all throughout history. We're really approaching this time where it's increasingly more important to stand out, the content creators, like all this stuff, this is like the new economy and it's having an opinion of your own. It's being able to put that out there into the world. That can be extremely rewarding, but it's not an easy process by any means. But as we work through it and kind of get more connected to ourselves, a lot of the judgments and the opinions and, I call it the gauntlet, that, me branching out and being shamed for it and that kind of thing that many people go through, that stuff all strengthens you. It can be a lonely path for a while. You could feel like you can't really connect to the people around you, but it's always this call to grow and to, find people that do align with you. So it's this ability to move forward in life, kind of shed our past, shed the things that we don't agree with, that we don't align with. That doesn't make anybody else wrong, because I don't agree with it doesn't mean it's right. It just means that's not what I prefer. It's getting to that place of, we have this one life to live. How do you want to live it? Do you just want to go through the motions or do you want to shake things up and do you want to be in this ongoing growth process? That's what this work is about is is kind of always seeking those opportunities to improve and change things to create better outcomes, but also to create that inner peace. That's my big thing is creating this inner peace. It's chronic stress is the number one killer, right? It compounds every issue in our life. And so through unpacking stress and opening our mind back up, we naturally think differently. We naturally have more compassion. We naturally treat other people better when we're not feeling bad all the time. So, there's so many layers to this idea. I think it's a worthwhile journey, if you feel called to it, because, it can be rewarding, and it can really make an incredible life if you start to be conscious about it. What do I really want? How do I get there? But you're not really predestined for anything. It's you get to make choices and decisions. There's going to be work to get through it. You have to question your thinking. You have to dismantle the limiting beliefs. But on the other side of it is it could be this ideal life for you. So it's worthwhile work. So it's my life's mission to share those ideas and how to get people free from their past so that they can start to step more fully into themselves. It can be monetarily rewarding, but it's also, in terms of your soul and your well-being, it does a lot too. So, I think it's one of those things that if you're early in the process, we don't want to feel isolated. We don't want to feel like nobody understands us. But a lot of times, like if I'm around people I don't really like that much to begin with, and they don't like me or they don't agree with me, like what am I actually losing? Right. So I want to get more and more in tune with myself so I can start to align with people that are on that same wavelength. Part of that is it's innovation within myself as well. Right. And that can show up in the external world through business or whatever it is. But we want to innovate ourselves because life is this continuous expansion if we let it be. But many of us get stuck and then we feel like we have to settle.
So as you were going through that, one of the things I sort of thought of, and in my, day job, we talk about this as a trait or a skill. Maybe it's a skill, but we talk about being solution minded. We want people to like come to the table and be solution minded. Maybe you can tie a little bit about how this like ability to make it up and the creativity around making it up is, because to me, it is the thing that makes you solution minded.
Our patterns, it's really to avoid pain most of the time and or to seek pleasure. Those are the two routes, but it's all that stuff set in stone. It's already done. I'm really in that place. I'm like pushing against problems. When we expand our mind, it is this like orientation to asking the deeper questions that lead to better solutions. If I'm just hardwired to think a certain way, that's going to keep me at a certain level. And I might be able to solve some level of problem. But, just like in any business, the people that climb are the creative problem solvers, right? They're the ones that can handle different situations and understand the nuance of it. But they're not just doing everything by the handbook. This is the foundations. This is like generally how this goes, but that doesn't solve every problem. If I'm just locked into following that protocol, like there are going to be times where I run into a wall where I can't think for myself. I don't have access to creative thinking. I need to go to somebody else higher up that has more experience. What experience does is it allows us to connect dots many different ways because we've solved tons of problems over many, many years. I had a call with a client today and, she's talking about one of her employees and, just kind of really breaking it down. They call it the 10,000 hour rule, to become an expert at something. And she was arguing that she's like, yeah, I think, well, it's really just 5 years of full-time work gets you to 10,000 hours. And she's like, I think that just creates competence of like, okay, I really know what I'm doing here, where I have this confidence to show up and do those tasks. Mastery is this idea, which is probably 5+ years on top of that, where I'm faced with many different types of situations within a specific realm where I can be dynamic in my problem solving. So I've had to wrestle with and work through so many different challenges that it starts to create these deep roots and this deep expertise. But then it's also, I'm able to relate past situations to the ones I'm currently experiencing and being like, okay, well, like this piece might work to help this, but I need to bring in other experiences to drive this all the way home. It's about this ability to connect many, many dots and to kind of relate those experiences to what we're currently dealing with and starting to formulate a plan based on that. That's why I literally just preach the same ideas over and over again. I could say any topic, it's literally the same thing. Okay. That's the importance of this is like once you do it once in one area, you start to see how it's the same process no matter what you're doing in life. The deeper I go in one area, the easier it is to solve problems in other areas because I start to see the threads, the common threads that run through everything. And then what we're trying to do is get our mind to expand to see things on that level where I can walk into something with this big picture view and I can start to diagnose, identify the problem much faster, but then I also know what the solution is much faster. And because I'm seeing opportunities that your average person won't, I'm able to see different possibilities within that problem that, okay, this is how we typically do this. But once we solve it that way, then it leads to these other problems. So good solutions are you're resolving problems at their core level where me solving one problem doesn't create five more. It's me solving one problem and then that gives me this path forward. And then I get higher level problems after that. This could be equated to Western medicine, the treating symptoms. We're not dealing with root causes. You take this pill to solve this symptom, but then this creates like a few other things that you got to deal with. And then it becomes this ongoing balancing act. So good solutions are handling things at their core so that it's not a problem anymore. A good system in a business will account for, the past problems. We've refined it to a point where we've kind of got this thing figured out. We don't really need to wrestle with that idea anymore because we've worked many different angles on it and we came up with a solution that covers most of those issues. That's all this ability to make it up. I need to be able to operate from trial and error. I need to be able to take some risks, put myself out there in a new way, try some things and not be so attached to it that I needed to make it work. I'm just testing things. That's like the mind of the scientist of like, okay, if I do this, what happens? You start working in that angle where you're more detached from it and you're not inserting your identity into each thing where if it doesn't work out, it's going to break your heart. You start to be depersonalized and detached from it. And you just approach it with this curiosity and you're just trying different things to see what happens. If I do these inputs, what's the output? With that, we start to gain more of that experience of like, okay, this is starting to be more predictable. The more angles I can hit on this thing, I can start to see what's really going on at the bottom of it.
Let's talk a little bit about what it takes to start. If you're someone who is great at taking direction, executing, doing what's asked of you, kind of staying inside the lines, but you want this like more creative life or this opportunity to like stretch out of said box. Like, let's talk about how you get started.
Well, it's just knowing that that stage is necessary, that is actually part of the process is like getting those reps in and learning things at that level. But that's also going to put a ceiling on you. If I just do that, like I'll probably stay at kind of in the similar range for the duration, the way I operate that way. I might become very efficient at that, but I'm not going to grow beyond it. And so the idea of starting is being, well, if I have desires to grow, if I want things to be better, I have to challenge that. I commonly work with this in the corporate world where it's like, okay, I learned to do these things at this level. Now I get promoted and now it's like you have to shift your way of being. What got you to one level is going to be what's holds you back at the next. We have to grow and expand our influence in different ways. Like if I'm managing more people, if I have more responsibilities, I can't I can't be in the weeds on so many things. I can't be into the small details that I've been trained on. I need to be able to fix those problems from a distance. And so I have to be able to open up my mind. I have to be able to detach. I have to be able to surrender control. Once I get really good at things, it's like hard for me to trust somebody else with that. But as long as I believe I have to do all the work, I'm only one person. I can't really grow outside of that. Like I need other people to do once I've developed a mastery behind something or a high level of competence. It's like now I have to get into teacher mode or coach mode so that I can teach other people. I can speed up that process for other people behind me. Okay. I'm just kind of overseeing and managing things from that level, which removes my presence. Like I have to have this high degree of certainty in myself in that process that I can come across as an authority and deliver that information effectively. And I also know it well enough to get somebody on board with that, and I can teach them the process where it's rather than sometimes you see this in the baseball world where there might be like amazing players, but then they go to try to be a coach and they like suck at it, right? Because they practiced it so much, they knew what they were doing, but going to teach it is a whole nother skill set. That usually takes a while to catch on. These are all part of that growth process of like, okay, if I become really good at something, like the starting would be like, can I teach it to another person? Right? Can I walk that? Because when you start to teach, you like deepen your learning now. Okay. This is the way I see it. But you're not trying to force or impose your way on anybody. It's just like, this is the way I look at it that allows me to solve it a lot faster than your average person. I'm looking for those key ideas that basically train a thought process that allows people to move through things faster. That teaching process, it's like, okay, well, like now that I'm teaching it, I might do well with one type of person, but another type of person, I might really struggle with my communication with them. And this is where like your Enneagram stuff comes in. It's like we have all these different styles of people. They need different things. They learn different ways. It's kind of being able, and that's when we're talking about getting to that stage of mastery, it's the understanding of all that stuff. This approach works with this type of person. I have a challenge with this type of person. So how do I need to adjust my style in order to speak to them? You have to be able to do that with all different personality types. That's the making it up process. I might have some clues of like, okay, this is this person's tendencies, but I'm going to have to try different ways to communicate with them until I can get through to them, right? That's trial and error. That's me making it up. That's me not being too attached to like, okay, well, because many people, it's just like, it worked this way with this person. So now that's my way because that's like safe to me. So when I go to another person that can't receive it that way, I think they're the problem. I start to, oh, like they're struggling, so that they must not be able to do it. Okay. But with this work, we really take responsibility for everything. Okay. Because that's how we're able to grow. We focus on what we can control. And so it takes that self-examination, it takes that self-awareness to be like, okay, well, yeah, maybe the way if I'm a direct communicator, maybe this person shuts down when I'm direct. So I might need to grow in other ways of communication in order to reach this person. And so each style I learn to adapt with, that I can be dynamic with, that increases my value. That's what makes me better and better, is I can be more dynamic in my teaching now, or my coaching is I'm not just speaking one language. I learned to speak 5 different languages. It's kind of that process, is like, I have to free myself up enough to be, there's a problem here. There's a gap. How do I fill that gap? I have to, one, search myself. Okay. Do I have resistance to this person? Do I have judgments to this person? Is that creating a communication block? And so I want to address that. And then it's also like, okay, well, like, how can I adjust the way I show up in order to get the result that I'm after here? That's all an internal process. And it's like, I'm not viewing each experience as a success or failure. I'm viewing it as this evolving process of, okay, I'm going to try this time this way. And through that experience, I'll get more information. So I'll go dissect that. I'll go kind of break it down and try and figure out like, okay, that didn't quite click. So what's something else I can try? And I just keep doing that. But I need this access to creativity. I need to be able to get out of my own way. I need to be able to surrender the way I typically do things. And that's me wandering into the unknown. That's me being dynamic with things and not too attached to them, so that I have the freedom to be creative. Because, we know what the goal is. My goal is to break through here. And the way I'm doing it isn't creating the result I want. So I have to keep adjusting until I get there. That's a entirely creative process. We're talking about this ability to really connect with another person and get to know them and see them for who they are and accept them for who they are and meet them where they're at. Right. That takes work. That takes me surrendering my ego too. It's not that like, oh, this person's not smart enough or anything like that. It's just like, well, like I haven't found the right button to press yet. So I'm going to try and keep trying things until it happens. But the trick is, once we clean up our energy and our judgments, a lot of these things unfold pretty naturally. I don't actually have to try a million things. It's more of, okay, if I'm struggling with this, I keep working through my own resistance around it. And as we dig into ourselves, it starts to reveal what the answer is. And the answer is always within us. And so as I get access to that, I'm going to hit this place of non-resistance. I'm going to hit this place of flow where like the dots are going to connect and I'm going to be like, okay, I get it now. And then when I go to approach it the next time, it's going to unfold pretty naturally because I've put myself in check where I'm no longer trying to force, manipulate. I'm not acting from ego. I'm in this place of surrender. And that allows this higher intelligence to just flow through me and really meet somebody where they're at.
Something you just said there, I think it would be cool if you could expand on it. And that is a little bit, you mentioned about getting out of ego. And when I think about it a little bit, there is this element to this making it up or this creativity that means you have to completely set the ego aside. But maybe like say more about that.
So the ego is this self-identity and we're always trying to protect it. And we always need to be right and like all that kind of stuff. If I'm really getting to this place of, okay, if I'm getting to the place of solution and I don't have that solution readily available, that automatically makes me question myself, right? I don't know. And in that place of not knowing, I get access to better answers, but I have to surrender these old ideas. Like, cause that's the lens I see things through. I have to expand how I see this in order to move past this challenge. It's about getting out of your own way. It's about not attaching our value to our results. If I'm really trying for something and it's not working, like often, so our ego is going to tell us that like I'm not good enough, that I'm not smart enough, I don't know what I'm doing, the imposter syndrome stuff, like all that. And if I leave it in that place, like I'm never going to solve that problem. And so it's getting to the place of like, it's okay that I don't know this. I'm actually safe. There's nothing like bad that's going to happen to me. But I stop fighting against those ideas and I start surrendering them where it's just like, hey, I'm here to create this result. I don't really know how that's going to happen. I'm going to keep making it up until I figure out what it is. That's like me completely wandering into the unknown, surrendering my past ideas and past judgments about things so that I can be in this place of emotional availability to see the bigger picture. And when I can get to that bigger picture, the solutions get more and more obvious. They're just going to stand out in your mind. So I went through like phases where I'm like, I'd get like a challenging client and I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to like work with that type of person again. Right. Now it's no, like that person's teaching me. So it's not this person doesn't want to do it. It's just like, I haven't found the way to get through to them yet. So I have to drop my ego and like thinking I'm great at this or whatever. And I have to always know that there's more to learn, that, everybody has these issues that they bring into any equation. And it's just like, those are the things we use to protect ourselves. And if I'm trying to protect myself, I'm not receptive. And so my number one goal is to make somebody comfortable and so they can put their guard down and they can start to be vulnerable and reveal to me like what's holding them back. I can't force that. I can't push on that. I have to create this inviting energy, which is me just in this complete place of service of like, hey, this isn't about me getting results with this person. This person came to me for help. And so I'm here to serve. I'm here to help. So I take me out of the equation. Every client I work with, every conversation takes on a life of its own, but every person I work with, I have a different style for. So all I'm doing is when I get on the phone, I'm surrendering myself and I'm just completely present with that person. And I'm trying to connect to their energy. And that's like feeding me information to work with, where I'm just following that path. They're guiding me with their energy. That's me completely removed from the process. I'm just getting out of the way and I'm just here. In that place, I'm able to be in tune and to hear things differently. And I'm able to, I get flashes of like specific things to say, or I get images that come up that's just like, this is where we need to go here. And I just trust that process. It's not me like, hey, this is the problem and this is how we're going to solve it. Pretty much every time, I think it's like an obvious thing. Well, I mean, with when I've been working with someone for a long time and I know a ton about them, it starts to be a lot more obvious. But especially in those beginning stages, it's just kind of like, okay, well, I think it probably leads here, but it's me surrendering that idea and being, well, like they're going to tell me where they're at with things, and that's going to lead us down a path. A lot of times we go in a completely different direction than I thought we would. If I was really attached to a process or an identity about things, like I wouldn't be able to go with them. It's this ability to surrender and to every session is like me jumping off a cliff. I have no idea what's going to happen. I just show up and I just go with where it goes. I'm literally like making everything up as we go. And that's the freedom I've created from deprogramming myself. It's that surrendering the ego, not not attaching my value to the results. Sometimes they take a little bit longer, but it's still like, we're in the process and we always make progress because it's not about me, it's about the other person.
I cannot remember the name of the guy who said this, but he does similar work to you. He is a medical psychiatrist, though, in addition to like all this is like part of his whole process. I wish I could remember his name because I know you know who he is. But he talks about the same idea about like that in order to sit with another person, you have to be completely empty, which is like the removal of the ego.
It's the X factor. It's the hardest thing to do. And that's why most people don't do it. And it's an ongoing challenge. You can never get full of yourself. You can never, because as soon as that happens, pride is kind of this thing that stands in the way. So it doesn't take much to keep that at bay anymore. But there was times where it did. You just keep stripping out the ego until you can really hold that space for somebody. Anybody that's really good at this work, they're really good at holding space. And so that just means I'm emptying myself out and I'm just here with you. I'm just here to act as a mirror and I'm here to guide you through your shadow. That's not about me at all.
Yeah. One thing you said where you're like, sometimes when I don't know clients super well, like you're just sort of guessing. I know a good number of people who work with you, and all of them, even in those like beginning sessions that you started them talk about, it's amazing how quickly like you connect those things. So
Well,
I've had
I mean, when you do this long enough, yeah, I mean, you see everything as patterns and I'm making educated guesses. It's not just like me,
shot in the dark.
yeah, it's not a shot. It's usually somewhere in this area. I might not have the exact thing, but it's going to be, plus or minus. It's going to be close enough that it gets the conversation going.
If the, dissolution of ego is like what really is leading to like the best creativity. You've talked a little bit about your process, like diving into the shadow. I guess I'm curious if there's any stories or anything that you would share of like clients, anything you could think of like, hey, we really worked through this thing and it ultimately we led to this like cool creative result or them able to see things like totally differently.
I think the main part is, which is like common with most people is they're not. So like my job is to like see somebody's potential, right? In like, okay, I know that anything holding you back it's simply just a limitation you've placed on yourself. And a lot of us have like given up on dreams we've had or desires that we want because we've been let down so much, we've had a lot of disappointments. We haven't had the support to really work through things and figure it out. That kind of puts a limit on our ability to see this greater version of ourselves. I would say that's like a common thread with everybody is, the starting point is, where you're currently operating. But, as we go deeper into things, you start to see new possibilities for yourself open up that weren't there before. The thing is there are always like desires that you hold, but you haven't allowed yourself to go there or fully own them. They're tucked deep down of like, yeah, I don't think this is possible given the circumstances I'm in. I don't want any more heartbreak or letdown, so I'm not going to even let myself like own that. I feel like people won't understand me, or I feel like they won't accept me, or those types of things. As we start to peel back the layers and start to create that peace, those things can pop to the surface and become actually a focus of like, oh, I thought I gave up on this, or I thought it was stupid that I even thought this. What usually pops through is like, oh, like I actually see this as a possibility or potential for myself now. And those are kind of those key moments that really start to set the stage for the ongoing work is just like, okay, well, like now that it's actually conscious, now we start to get to work on like, okay, how do we make this happen? Progress isn't linear. Things usually take quite a while before they come to full fruition. Once you see somebody like allow themselves to go there, like it does kind of light this new spark in them. It breathes new life into them where it's just like, okay, like I can actually get there now. That starts to carry this different pace of like, I thought I just had to settle for this type of life. And now this still might feel like a stretch. It's actually like, it feels more tangible. It feels like we start to wake up that drive towards it because our heart's desires are heart's desires. That stuff doesn't go away. We can convince ourselves not to want it. But that's, really what leads to like depression and stuff like that. It's just like I gave up on the things that mattered to me. And so if I start to see that there's a reason that happened and that there's actually a path to work through that where I don't have to do that anymore, it really does just breathe new life into a person, which is a pretty special thing. The last podcast, we talked about it is, this triathlete that had given up on triathlon. And now it's, oh, wait, no, I can actually go do this again. That type of stuff of like when you give up on something, it's like that is heartbreak. Well, like I feel like a part of me is missing because I won't allow myself to go there anymore because it's like broke my heart so many times that, I just can't deal with that anymore. But once we actually like deal with it, it breathes new life into it and it creates these new avenues. Another one is because I work with a lot of triathletes, one that's she's just like super obsessed with triathlon on every level, but it was actually the thing that was like destroying her life the most was all the desperate energy behind it and the needing to prove herself, achieve through that. She was losing sight of the other things in her life that mattered, right? We think that's the dream is just like this achievement, but really it's deeper than that. And it's usually not that. So as we've gone through the process with her, she's actually detaching from it and she's finding joy in other areas. Her life's opening up in all these other things because she's creating more and more space for things that breathe life into her rather than clinging to this other thing so desperately.
So if we were to leave our listeners with like the key takeaways or the things that you kind of want to, hit on again or wrap on, what would those be?
One, you're not a finished product. Many of the things you're living aren't actually yours. They're just things you've taken on. You've created safety patterns. You've aligned with things because that was the best strategy at certain points in your life. If that's starting to feel a little bit daunting and you don't have much excitement or things you look forward to in life, we might want to shake that up. We might want to start to question that. We might want to remove structures in your life. So we value structure. Structure is a very important stage. That's how we start to build a skill. That's how we create a life. But there's a point where that structure can be very confining. We could start to put limits on things and not make room for our desires. And now we're at odds with things. Sometimes I get too invested in one way of being that I feel like I lose everything if I step out of that. That's never true. Everything's a remodeling, just like you remodel a house. If you have a house from the 90s, you probably want a different style. It doesn't need to stay that way forever. Yeah, I need to update the bathroom and the kitchen and all these things so that this feels like home again. So that's all we're talking about is refreshing things, waking them back up, pulling to the surface what really matters to you. This ability to make it up is this we have to have this idea of like nothing's really that serious. This is my life. I get to choose how I live it. Every experience is a learning lesson if we allow it to be. There's no finish line, really. It's an ongoing process. And so even if I try something drastically different, it doesn't mean I'm committing to that for the rest of my life. So our mind likes these all or none terms. And we want to be in this place of curiosity and exploration and just this openness. And we want to align that with our core values, the things that matter most to us, because that's what really breathes life into us is when we're living in alignment with who we are. Sometimes we have to remodel some values. Maybe you've thought something was true your whole life and maybe that doesn't quite fit anymore. Maybe it is limiting. And we have to put a spin on things. We have to refresh it. And so it doesn't mean we're throwing everything away. It means, okay, what are the good pieces here and what needs to change? And whatever needs to change, I need that access to creativity to be like, how do I bridge these things together in a way that makes sense for my life? Giving ourselves that freedom to do that. In order to do so, we have to risk being judged by other people. We have to risk being misunderstood. But are we living our life for other people or are we living it for ourselves? If you have kids, obviously, you're probably living for your kids as well, but it's still, if you give all of yourself away and there's nothing left, it's like you're probably not going to be very happy. So these things they're a balance of like, how do I stay in tune with myself, stay connected to myself, and live out some of my desires in a way that makes sense given the context of my life. And some that's going to take a lot of creative problem solving. And so to be creative, I need to surrender the past. I need to let go of past programming, past ideas about myself. And I need to continually update that to what makes sense for my life now. Who am I now based on everything I've lived? If we have negative ideas about that, that's just simply, once again, unresolved issues. We get the power to rebuild ourselves, but it's like we get the power to neutralize negative emotions too. It's all based on how I'm seeing the situation. If I feel trapped, if I feel like there's no possibilities, if I feel powerless, that's never going to feel good. So it's like, then we start to ask, what can I do to get my power back? What can I do to feel better about this? What can I do to create some new opportunities or possibilities in my life? We just start to wrestle with these things and open them up. And as we've talked about many times, it's not a straight line. It's like, as I take a step forward, the deeper layers are going to come to the surface that are in conflict with what I'm trying to accomplish. As I step forward, there's going to be tension. There's going to be stress. There's going to be aspects of my past that are going to surface that I need to reconcile in order to keep moving forward. So I just kind of view it as the process. It's ongoing. Every change takes that. I'm taking new steps, but then I have to let go of old steps. It's both sides of the equation. Once we do this enough, we catch a rhythm where we expect that and we don't make it a big deal. We don't use the contraction phase or the stressful event as a reason why we can't do something or why it's holding us back. We just kind of view it as a necessary part of the process of, okay, this is showing me what I believe about this situation. And I can't look at it that way and get to where I want to go. And so I have to shift that. I have to rewire that to see it differently. And that's always an expansion process. I have to look at a bigger picture. I have to depersonalize. I have to let go of those beliefs about myself, about how I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, whatever it is. All the shame-based programming, as we strip that out, my world starts to open up. I start to experience myself differently. I start to experience people around me differently. And now I have more of this freedom to roam where me making things up and just trying things out like doesn't feel like life or death anymore. Our goal is to create this freedom to play. That's a very key idea is we shut down, suppress the childlike aspects of ourselves to be an adult, but the journey is back to yourself. And so it's integrating the child part of you, which is kind of the playful creative aspect. We want to unlock those energies and retrieve those so that you can bring that into your perspective now And it doesn't mean you live like a child. It means you can hold the responsibilities of life, and you can also, once again, not take everything so seriously. Trust that things will always work out for you. Trust that with every experience, there's lessons for you to learn. And that's an ongoing process that never ends.
All right, great. Let's talk a little bit about where everybody can find you and any other updates or things that you want to share.
If you're curious about this work, want to free yourself up, be less serious, get more into that play mode, you can schedule a free 30-minute strategy session with me on my website, brandonthielk.com. So I just get to know a little bit about you and share how this work can help, given the context of your life. And also, if you want to register for the Lightning Report, that's my weekly newsletter that gives updates on the business, some prompts to think about for the week to deepen your thought process. You can register for that on my website as well. You can we post out on Instagram and YouTube pretty regularly. You can follow me at Brandon Thielk and also at bthielk on TikTok. Please like, subscribe, follow. Ask any questions you may have. Would love to hear from you guys. And if there's any specific topics you guys would like to hear me talk about, go ahead and share those as well.
Yeah. The links for all of those things will be in the show notes or the YouTube description. Just one quick add-on to all the places you can find Brandon. There's also now a Substack. So if you're a reader and you like to, kind of read through things, there will be a blog version of the podcast every week available to you on Substack as well.
Always expanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll talk to you guys next time.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you later, Brandon.